Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode on my BookTube channel. My name is David Walters, the runner of the blog Fan Fight Addict, and today I have the Sandman Slim author Richard Kadrey. Richard, how you doing tonight?
All right, thanks for having me.
Good, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on. Well, I guess I say tonight. It's midday, I guess, for you still, right?
It's about 3:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, not too bad.
Okay. Have you had a pretty good day today? Got any writing done?
Yes, I did get some writing done in the morning, and I'm sort of planning. What I do is I sketch out scenes before I write them, so it's almost like writing a play. I'll sketch out brief sections of action and then a lot of dialogue and then brief sections of action. So it's literally a sketch of the thing, and which allows me then to write the scene quickly.
Okay. Do you feel like that kind of helps you in your comic writing as well? Is that kind of how you started that process, or did it just kind of come to you and then comic books kind of came after?
Comics came after, but it's interesting. Writing comics and the way I write novels is very similar in that comics are, the scripts for comics can be fairly stripped down. They can be very detailed, but they can also be just a couple of sentences of description, leaving the rest to the artist, and then your dialogue. Or they can go, if it's a very specific scene, I've gone on for a page about what a certain scene has to look like for a certain effect. And it's the same thing working out the book. It can be, a whole chapter in my notes can be, Stark has a sandwich. And then then when I get there, I have to extrapolate everything from what his mood is, how the sandwich tastes, is it the sandwich he wanted, etc.
Do you also have to you talk about how he puts the sandwich together, and which side does he put mayo on?
Absolutely. He's not a mayo guy. I don't think Stark's a mayo guy.
Okay. What is he? Is he more of like a just no condiment period kind of guy?
No, I think he likes spicy.
Okay. All
I
right.
think he likes spicy.
I gotcha. So kind of before we get into the whole discussion about books and writing itself, I kind of want to go back to the beginning. I want to know, who is Richard Kadrey? What did he do growing up, going through school, and then how did he become a writer?
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, moved to Texas when I was a kid. I've been writing all my life. My mom was a reporter for a small newspaper in New York, so I was always around writers. I was always around writing. I was always around the tools of writing. My mother had an electric typewriter, which I loved to play on as a kid, and endless piles of pads and interesting pens and pens and pencils. So the tools fascinated me as much as the writing itself. I tried to write my first book. I think I was like no, it must have been more like 9. I think I wrote my first book at 9 and got about 20 pages into that before it all kind of fell apart. But so I've been really writing all my life. I've tried to quit a few times over the years because it was very frustrating getting started. I think everybody feels that. And you try to walk away. Just about every writer I know has tried to walk away at some point. But I think what you find out about being a writer, to paraphrase something Ursula Le Guin said, is that if you're a writer, you're more miserable not writing than you are writing. And sometimes writing is incredibly fun, and other times it's just the worst thing in the world. You're just yanking. Every word is like yanking a tooth. But then you have great days where it just flies by and it's really fun. Like those days, that's what you live for.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've tried several times to start novels. I've had ideas pop into my head. I'll write about 1,000 words, and I feel like I've got a pretty good little prologue, and then it sits and sits and sits because I get doing other things, because I've got a full-time job and now I've got a new
Right.
and I'm trying to keep up a blog and actually read instead of write. And
Yeah.
I'll just have these ideas that just pile up in a folder and I never go back to it because I always feel I tell myself I don't have the time, and then I tell myself, well, I have nothing else that I can give to this because the idea is there, but now I have no story.
Well, I mean, sounds like you have plenty of stuff to do right now, and that's a lot of what writing is taking control of your time.
Mhm.
And that that doesn't work at various points in your life. So if you're going to do the podcast, if you're going to do a blog, if you're going to have a job, that's a lot to handle. So I can see not getting a lot of fiction writing done under those circumstances.
Mhm.
So, don't beat yourself up over it. If down the road some of those things slow down, then you can come back to it. Because, you know, eh, you can write any time. I mean, you don't have to start out when you're 20. You don't have to start when you're 30. You can come to writing at any point in your life. I mean, I don't think I wrote a really good word until I was in my late 20s, and even that was pretty wonky when I sold my first novel. That's a pretty wonky book. So I don't think I wrote anything really good until Butcher Bird. That's the first book I consider mine.
I gotcha. Yeah, I hear about some authors start their teens, but you've got a ton of authors, especially I guess probably in the last decade that probably sell a book at least in their late teens, early 20s, and then you've got some authors that don't even start trying to get published until 40s, 50s,
Yeah,
60s, and some don't even get their first public publishing contract until they're later on in life, and
yep,
it and yeah, you're right. It's all about having the time set aside to do it and actually get it done. A lot of
yeah,
writers I talk to say that they as soon as they wake up in the morning they start writing, or at least they plan to start writing.
right.
Words may not all be there, but at least they start typing stuff out. I heard the other day somebody said that I think it was Laurel K. Hamilton. She said that she types about all the reasons why she can't write today to get
Mm,
kind of writing juices flowing, and then she can start her day as far as
yeah,
her count or page count, which I found very interesting.
yeah. That's one way to do it. Email, just writing notes to friends just to get your brain working can also be a good way to do it. Any whatever trick you need to do to get your brain engaged, that's you have to find your own process. That's what it comes down to. When I had a full-time job, I couldn't write in the morning. I'm not a morning person, so I'd drag myself out of bed. I'd go to work. I'd do the job, and I'd stay late. I'd stay for an hour after work when everybody else had gone home, and I'd work. I'd write at work. I'd bring my laptop, and I'd work at the desk for another hour, hour and a half, and then go home because I knew once I went home after a full-time job, I was just going to collapse.
Yeah.
So my trick was to just have that full work day and then keep going. And it's the only way I can make myself do anything. And I wrote a lot of Butcher Bird. I began Butcher Bird that way. I wrote a lot of Metrophage that way. I did a good chunk of my second novel that was a kind of a disaster called Kamikaze L'amour. So, it's finding your own time. It's finding your own process. There are no rules to this stuff. There's no rules and there's no timing. So just, make notes, keep all your notebooks. Don't worry about it until you're ready.
Yeah, yeah. I thought being able to work from home would help with that. I mean, I had a few months before we had our daughter.
Yeah,
Uh, and like even the reading suffered. It was just like
yeah,
this existential dread that just kind of hovers over you, and so you're just like, okay, I'll get the work day done, and then I just don't really want to deal with anything else, and I'll turn my brain
right.
with binging a Netflix series or something. Um,
Hmm.
and so yeah, it's just kind of slowly continued. But the last idea I had, literally, I woke up at like 3 in the morning with just this small, just snippet of something, and so I grabbed my phone out, got on my notepad, and just typed, and I got about 1,200 words out at 3:30 in the morning. And
Yeah,
I was so excited. I was like, I told my wife, when she woke up, I was like, "Oh, you got to read this and tell me if it's any good." And she goes, "Okay, it sounds great." And I go, "Now what do I do?"
yeah,
Because I
yeah.
mean, you just kind of go back into the routine after that. So I'm like, okay, so now I just need to start waking up at 3:30 in the morning because that's apparently when the juices, at least at that point in time, were flowing. So
Well, I think for a lot of people it works that way. It certainly did for me when I was starting out. I'm a big believer in the unconscious helping you with your fiction. So when you're tired, you're not thinking with your rational mind, and that's when a lot of interesting stuff can pop in there. Even now, I mean, I've written a ton of books. I've written a lot of words. If I have a problem with a story, if I have a problem with a plot point in a book, one of the things I can do, honest to God, is lie down in the afternoon and take a nap. And it's not a real nap. It's sort of a twilight sleep. It's like you're sort of halfway there. But it allows the unconscious part of your brain to wrestle with those questions sometimes. And honest to God, I've had plot holes just instantly be filled by some goofy little thought or dream or a few words that pop up before or after a nap.
Hmm.
So don't always just, try to make your rational brain force the words out. You can always make your notes and then just keep your notebooks and let it set in your head, because sometimes
Mhm.
it just takes a while.
Kind of let it settle, and then let it kind of come to you. I can't even organically, I guess. Uh,
Yeah, that's one way to do it. And then you do that, and you end up with a deadline, and the deadline becomes your organic thing because you're looking at the calendar a lot, and
yeah.
that'll motivate you too.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah, but writing without a deadline is like, oh, I can just do it tomorrow. You just continue to procrastinate about it.
yeah, exactly,
And I can
exactly.
only imagine how great naps are. I wish my wife tells me I need to take more of them. I'm like, I haven't been a nap person since college, because I had all the time in the world to nap in college, and now
Right.
I started working as a career. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't get naps during the week. I mean, weekends maybe, but yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work out anymore. I'm too much of a. She calls me an energizer bunny. I've always got to be doing something.
All right.
So laying down and doing shut eyes only at night.
Well, that can work too.
Yeah.
Keep that pad and the pen by your bed. If you think of something at 3:30 in the morning, write it down. Again, it's about your process, and don't ever think you need to follow anybody else's rules.
Yeah.
Just do what you need to do.
Yeah. After I've done, gosh, like around 60 of these chats since November
Mm,
last year. And that's kind of what I've learned is every single person's process is different. There may
yeah.
be some pieces that are similar, but I mean, from, you know, kind of how you start your morning, whether it's you have to have a cup of coffee or you have to have
Hmm.
a certain breakfast to be able to, to sit down in front of the computer. Or, I mean, I have several authors I talk to that handwrite everything.
Hmm.
My mind. I don't. I hate writing, so I don't know if I could do that. But it's just so crazy because you would think that after talking to so many people, there'd be a lot of similarities, and there really just aren't.
No.
Because everybody started differently in the beginning, and or they've kind of progressed to something different by the time they hit their second, third, 11th, 12th, book.
Right.
And so, some things don't always stay the same.
Yeah. I mean, things change too. I have the last two Sandman Slim books. I've mostly written at the computer, so I often have big handwritten notebooks for each of the novels. I don't have those for the last two books because, for whatever reason, these last two ended up being computer books rather than notebooks. So, even when you've been doing this for a while, your method can change. You have to follow whatever's working for that piece of fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of my next question. I want to know who kind of inspired you, I guess, to write. Who were maybe some early inspirations, and do you have any inspirations that maybe even present day that you would say continue to inspire you to write?
Well, the first three, I mean, as an adult, the first three writers I can think of. would be Robert Stone, the author of Dog Soldiers, William Burroughs, Naked Lunch. And in terms of fantasy and science fiction, Roger Zelazny was a big one. I don't think people talk about him much anymore, or talk about him enough. I think he's a terrific writer who, yeah, like I said, people don't talk about him enough. He's very literate, very imaginative, very smart, very funny. So he was a big deal. I also have to say, when it came to writing, I mean, I started out writing science fiction. And when my agent suggested maybe I should try fantasy, you know, my first reaction was, I don't write that stuff. I don't read that stuff. I don't like that stuff.
Yeah.
But then she pointed me to Neil Gaiman's Sandman and some of Holly Black's work. Holly writes YA, but it's very smart, very, very tight, very adult YA. And then Sandman, of course, is Sandman. So that was a brilliant thing to run across. And, you know, my Sandman Slim has no relation. And
Right.
where I got my Sandman, the name is sort of an old pulp novel term for a hitman. They would call him a Sandman because they put you to sleep. I've been happy that there's been very little confusion between Gaiman's Sandman and mine. I was afraid at first to use the name, but my editor said to take a shot. I did, and I've been pretty happy and pretty lucky simply about the name itself.
Mm-hmm. I say it seems to be working out pretty well.
Yeah, so far, I mean, 12 books in.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you know, Gaiman's a phenomenal writer. I've
Yes.
loved everything I've read by him. Now, I haven't listened to the new audio rendition of Sandman. Have you had a chance to listen to it?
I'm not really interested in the audio version. To
Okay.
me, Sandman is visual. There are certain stories that are visual. There are certain stories that are prose. And to me, Sandman, I'm just not interested in doing it like a play. I mean, if somebody I trust tells me it's the best thing ever, I'll give it a shot. But right now, it just doesn't. The concept doesn't grab me.
I gotcha. All right, moving on to the next little bit. So as far as your writing process, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about kind of how you write your scene,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about how it kind of is similar to the way you write comics. How would you say that your process has changed since you know, day one or book one to now being, you know, about to release book 11 in the Sandman Slim series?
I started out writing everything by hand. Everything was pen, sometimes pencil, on yellow legal pads. I still use yellow legal pads when I have to work by hand. I have a few moleskins and some other notebooks, but for some reason I keep going back to those yellow legal pads. And the transition from writing everything by hand to being able to write anything originally on a typewriter and now with the computer, it was a long process. It was a process of teaching myself to think and use my body in a different way. And I mean, literally the way words travel through my body. I often tell people, if you're having trouble writing, one of the things to do is to change your methods. So if you write at the computer, start writing by hand. If you write by hand, start writing at the computer. I'm a firm believer that the physicality of writing is important. The way words flow through your body, whether you're typing or handwriting, can be important at different points. You may need one technique or the other. I only had one technique when I started, and that was handwriting. Now I have two that I can rely on when one doesn't work.
Huh. I mean that's fantastic. I haven't heard that before because, you know, usually it's just one or the other, and then
Yeah.
maybe eventually somebody will transition from, you know, a computer to a typewriter or back, you know, vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard of having one kind of as a backup plan in case the other's not working out. That's really interesting.
It's nice to have more than one method. and it will save you sometimes for when you're up against the wall and just nothing is working. Always just change your method, even if it means changing what room you're writing in. If you're right in the office, go right in the kitchen for a while. If well, you can't go to a cafe anymore.
Yeah.
When cafes are available again, go right in a cafe. Just change something.
Mhm.
Change. Don't sit there banging your head against a wall. Change something significant in the way you're working, and it can make a huge difference.
Do you, I mean, besides, I guess, like a setting change, do you find that changing anything else about maybe your lifestyle or the way you go about your day helps or hinders? Like
Well,
if you change maybe the, I don't know, the way you ate, for a week or something, do you feel like that maybe had changed your, the way you wrote, or you,
no, nothing like that. I mean, there are times I need more coffee than others, but that's about the only big change I can think. I mean, you don't
I
want to
say
eat.
we can always use more coffee.
And always use more coffee. Don't if you're going to work all day, do not eat a giant lunch. If you're going to have a meatball sub, save it for dinner because you eat something the size of a cat for lunch, and you're just gonna fall asleep afterwards. So, yeah, in terms of lifestyle things, I'd say have coffee and a snack in the middle of the day. If you're gonna be writing all day, you know, don't eat a turkey.
Yeah, but I say don't eat a big meal, or
Yeah,
have some afternoon cocktails, like Jimmy says.
I've every now and then I'll break that rule, have a cocktail, but not that often. But sometimes that's again changing your method. Sometimes it's like, you know what, if I had a little bourbon right now, maybe that would change things. But again, I'm you don't ever want to associate liquor or drugs with your writing, and I've had friends get a little stuck on that. So the cocktail thing is very seldom, but it's nice to do every now and then. It's always nice to break the rules.
Yeah, right.
Whether they're your rules or somebody else's rules, you gotta go in there and smash them up sometimes.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with a finger or two of bourbon every now and then.
Yep,
Just in the middle of the day.
absolutely, absolutely.
So kind of before we get into Sandman Slim,
Yeah,
so I want to know about some of your other works, and I know there's been a few comments about some of your other novels as well. Metrophage. So it was first released in 1988. I know it was re-released a few years ago, but it's
yeah,
your cult classic dystopian cyberpunk tale. So can you tell those of the audience that aren't familiar with it a little bit about it?
yeah. Cult classic. That's always an amusing thing to hear about your own work. It was my first novel, and although I wrote it clear-headed, it reads like someone on speed because at the time, like a lot of people, your first novel, you don't know how to write, or you don't know how to write a book. I've written a bunch of stories, but you don't know how to sit down and write 100,000 words. And the thing you're terrified of more than anything else is losing the audience's attention. So Metrophage starts out fast and literally never slows down. Like from the first page to the end, every single thing is moving all the time, and I'm constantly throwing concepts and images and noise and fancy words around. It's a very it's a very young man's book. It's a very show off kind of a book. I think it's fun, but it, it's something I can look at now and go, "Who the hell wrote this thing?" Because it's kind of crazy. But it's a book built basically on science fiction, cyberpunk, and panic. Sheer panic.
Okay. So yeah, I like how you said that. You look back at it and go, what in the world did I write? I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of authors kind of look back at their first book, and I mean, granted, a lot of them look back at the ones that they wrote that are never going to see the light of day, and I'm always interested to hear about those. I'm sure you may have a few
Nope.
as well.
No, I've
You
been real
know,
lucky. I've you know I've been very lucky in terms of like books, comics, all those things. Like I pretty much everything I started, I've sold. So that first novel, it was my first novel. Metrophage was the first serious novel I tried, and I sold it. And for I should also mention selling that I sold to Terry Carr at Ace Books, and that was a long time ago. But Terry Carr had been one of my teachers at the Clarion Writing Workshop. Clarion is a 6-week writing retreat where students and science fiction writers and editors will coach them on writing. It was very big a long time ago, and now it still exists with even better, I think, facilities and teachers. If you're a young writer starting off and you have the time and in some cases the money, although they do have grants, to go do something like Clarion, I really recommend it because it won't teach you how to write, but it'll teach you how to avoid dumb stuff. It's a very quick education on how not to be stupid early on. And that's what helped me. And it also meant I met editor Terry Carr, who, sort of changed my life by buying that first book because I could approach him and say, because I didn't really know that many people in science fiction, but I knew him. It's like, hi, Terry, you were one of my teachers. Do you remember me? I have a book. Would you look at it? He just said, yeah, sure, send it to me. And 4, 6 weeks later, he just called me up and said, yeah, we're going to buy it. He made
wow.
me rewrite it. I mean, completely. But yeah, he bought the thing. So I've been really lucky with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if he butchered it in edits.
He was pretty good. He gave me some really good advice early on, and I followed it. And so by the time I got to the end of the book, it was pretty solid in terms of what he wanted. There were a lot of little changes, but I didn't have to destroy it. That first that first big pass I made, I wrote it once. I wrote it the second time for him specifically, and then there were just a few little touch ups, and the book kind of was what it was. And like I said, it's just this mad rush from beginning to end, and it kind of amuses me now how crazy, and I can see the panic in the words, even though it's fun in a lot of ways.
I gotcha. So you were saying it's kind of like a young man's novel. It's just adrenaline packed and just doesn't stop. It's always
Yeah,
put on the accelerator.
yeah. I mean, it's the kind of book you write when you're young and starting out, and I can really see that in the prose and in the style. A lot of very questionable plot choices that are just there because I don't know how to get from this scene to the other. So let's just have something explode or have somebody kidnap somebody or have somebody hit someone over the head. So a lot of that kind of thing is going on. So yeah, it's definitely a first novel and it's a decent one, but I think also it suffers from both my learning to write, but also the time and some of what I consider some of the problems with early cyberpunk, especially um, a bit of I guess the term is Orientalism, which is fetishing Asian culture. They were all obsessed with Japan at the time, and I think there was a little bit of that Victorian attitude of, oh, this is so fascinating. Let's look at the interesting Asian people. And
Mhm.
I will cop to that absolutely. There was a bit of fetishism there that I'm not happy with. Again, that's part of being a young man's book and a panic cheap trick. But I see it in other work of that period. I don't think I was alone in that. And I think certainly science fiction and cyberpunk has come a long way since then. I certainly would never write anything like that again.
I gotcha. Um, okay, so another I guess basically your newest release up until the 25th. But your new standalone dark fantasy novel, The Grand Dark.
Yeah.
Which I've got. I don't know if you can see it. It's
Okay.
under my name. But just those from unfamiliar with it as well. Would you mind talking a little bit about it and kind of
Yeah.
decided to write a dark fantasy novel?
Yeah. It's very different from anything else I've ever written. I think well, the term we came up with originally when I'd written it was Kafka punk. It's in a sort of fictionalized version of Berlin and Prague in the 20s. It's in a city state called Lower Prajava. It's about a young man named Largo Morden, who's a bicycle messenger. And unlike someone like Stark in Sandman Slim, he has no special powers. He's a young 21-year-old guy, a bike messenger with a pretty girlfriend and a lot of drugs. And that's all he wants out of life. So what the book is, it sets out to destroy all of that. It's essentially the Weimar period in Germany, but with genetic engineering and robots, and a looming war in the background. It's a strange book because I wanted to write both the story and the world. I'd never written, I guess the term is secondary world novel, where you completely create a world from scratch. Most of my work takes place in New York, Los Angeles, or something like that. Lower Prajava does not exist. It was fun to create the world. And so one of the things I worked out with my editor was the idea of having the main story, but then having little interstitial sections throughout. So there are everything from folk tales to brochures for robots to a travel brochure at one point to testimonials from ex-soldiers and people like that, to expand the world beyond the story and take you deeper into what Lower Prajava was, the people's daily life in this city. And I think it's a technique I'll probably try again. It was really a fun way to do sort of two things at once. I didn't want to have a prologue, I didn't want to have an afterword, but I did want to get deeply into the world I'd created. And those little interstitial sections with the main story were a really fun way to do it. And I think people have enjoyed it from what I've seen in terms of readers and reviewers.
I still find it funny, when you were approached to write fantasy and and you were like, oh,
Yeah,
I do that, and then
I
you've
don't do
kind of
that
come
stuff.
full circle now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
funny. How many years have I been writing Sandman Slim? Over 10 years now, 11 years. I've mostly been writing fantasy. I just sold my first science fiction story in about 12 years to Tor.com. So that'll be interesting. That was really fun to write science fiction again for a brief moment. I actually have an idea for a science fiction novel. I'll get to that, when I get a chance.
yeah.
But it's nice to be back in that world too. I'd had this science fiction story idea for a long time, and it's sort of it's funny. I wrote it during a pandemic, and it's a pandemic story I'd had in the back of my head for years, and it wasn't inspired by any particular pandemic, certainly not this one, but it must have been something unconscious because I couldn't write the thing until we were in the middle of this nonsense right now.
Mhm.
That it all came together, that the actual structure presented itself beyond the simple idea of this road story in a pandemic world. So again, the unconscious can really help you out, and I think it's a solid story.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm really looking forward to your tour.com novella because they put out some great stuff. I've
They're
read
amazing.
a lot of their novellas, for the past couple of years since I started my blog, and I actually just finished one by P. Jelly Clark called Ring Shout.
I
Um,
don't know that one. Yeah.
just stunning. It comes out in October, but it's like a historical fiction fantasy novel about this this group of not really mercenaries, but it's in like 1915 after Birth of a Nation came out, and
Hmm.
basically fighting back against the Ku Klux Klan. But the members actually happen to be like monsters, so it's almost like a Lovecraft
Okay.
thing. But it's really really good. So, but
Sounds interesting.
continue to put out amazing stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. Those
definitely
four
looking for that one.
novellas are kind of becoming my favorite thing right now. I don't carry books with me when I'm on tour or traveling. Again, I don't travel these days like anybody else. But when
Yeah.
I do travel, if I want to carry something physical, it's going to be one of those. It's going to be probably be a novella.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not, if I'm going to carry, if I'm going to read a novel on the road, it's going to be something on Kindle. But if I want something physical, novellas are great.
Yeah, yeah. Usually, if we go on trips, I'll take the Kindle and maybe one or two novellas because got the same thickness, and you can take 3 or 4 of them, and those are
Right.
you can read in a sitting or two, which
Yeah.
also is nice. I feel more accomplished being able to read something
Right.
shorter. So kind of going back to the Grand Dark, you're talking about adding some extra pieces to kind of bring people more into the world. I've
Yeah.
some authors have done that as well. So, some other fantasy authors. One in particular, his name is Michael Fletcher.
Hmm.
A book called Beyond Redemption, and what he did was basically created a new almost like religion and brought
Hmm.
text at the beginning of every chapter, and
Mm.
so it gave you even more of like a dose of the world. And he's kind of continued that through his other series, and I've started
Hmm.
more authors take that into account. And I think that's a fantastic little world building piece that everybody could do. Uh,
Yeah.
it can be a sentence, it could be a couple of sentences, but I feel like you can just continue to if you I guess as you as the writer, if you are kind of stuck somewhere, you can kind of go back and maybe pick up a piece from something that you wrote prior, in those small little tidbits, and you can add
Hmm.
something else to the story.
Well,
Uh,
that's the other thing too. I did it in Butcher Bird too. I mean, you have those moments where the main story might stump you, so you have the opportunity then to think about something interesting in the world, and so you can take a break from the main story, writing the main story, and write one of those little interstitial bits, and that may get you back into the process of the main story again. So it's another way of breaking up your work routine, is to be able to go back and forth between those two ideas. And in Butcher Bird, I did a similar thing where I had everything from little bits of mythology to even poetry by a mythological group. So yeah, it was it's a really nice technique. Uh, I think people ought to think about it more.
mhm.
You need discipline about it, like anything else, but it can be really helpful, and it can really open up your world in a way that you know more than just stopping the story for endless descriptions of things. You don't need to do that. You can keep your story moving, put in something a little interstitial bit. I can't stand that kind of writing where you just halt everything. I mean, to me, it's that sort of the worst of Tolkien, that just just halting everything for a bit of bloat. In my mind, I'm not the biggest Tolkien fan, and I know I'm going to get a
Couldn't
lot
tell.
of. I'm probably going to get a lot of Twitter crap and Facebook crap from saying that. He's very good at some things. He's not the he ain't my cup of tea.
He's not the end all be all.
No.
Yeah.
He's I read him when I was young, and it was interesting, and parts of it were exciting, and I got what he was. I think I got what he was going for,
Mhm.
but I like The Hobbit better. You get in, you tell the story, you get the hell out again.
Exactly. But then they make it into 3 movies, and you're just like, all
But
right.
then you made it into 3 damn movies, and it was just horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you mean though. I can't stand info dumpy pieces in books, and they completely turn me off. I mean, you
Yeah.
sit there and go on for 5 pages about one thing, and I go, All right, we were at a giant battle scene, and now
Yeah,
learning about how somebody's room looks in a palace, and I'm done. You've completely lost me. I've got to put it down. I'll maybe come back to it later.
that's the problem. Is you hit one of those sections where, you know, unless someone's going to kill somebody with the napkin rings, I don't really need to know what the napkin rings are like. You know, if you're going to describe a banquet, it's a real nice banquet, really opulent. That's great. I don't need to know every single detail unless that detail is important. And I think writers and again, especially younger writers, need to learn that kind of stuff. That's the self-indulgent panic writing. That's the kind of stuff I did in Metrophage. I think at times, just over describing things to make them stranger for people because I was so afraid if I didn't make it strange in some way or incredibly detailed so that everybody could see every single thing, including the napkin rings, that I'd lose people's interest.
Yeah,
So you learn over time to pace yourself to what's important, to figure out what's important in the scene, and to leave out all the other crap.
yeah. Nobody really cares about the sconces unless they're going to go through somebody's face or something, right?
I kind of think, or if they tell something about the history of the place, or are they pretentious sconces? Are they nice sconces? You know, little things like that can be great, um, but there's got to be a damn reason other than running.
They're beautiful and
They're really
they
pretty
add to
sconces.
the.
Great, great.
But to
Again,
say that they're made out of some elemental metal that's not found anywhere else.
there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason the thing is there. Otherwise, it's just pointless and
It,
just drags everything down.
it's just adding to word count at that point.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
that's you don't need that. Nobody needs that.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine for your first draft, but it's what you need to cut out when you go through.
Well, that's the thing. Put everything in your first draft. That's what a first draft is for. Put in every single idea, every dumb thing you want in the story, and then then the magic of the second draft is you can figure out what's important.
Yeah.
But yeah, make your first draft as self-indulgent as you want. Absolutely. Put in everything. And then between between your thoughts and the editor's thoughts, you can figure out what needs to be in there and what needs to go out. And in fact, you may worry about the napkin rings, and the editor may say, "You know what? You left out the fork, and the fork's more important. So talk more about the damn forks."
Right. Yeah. Cut the fluff and talk about the forks.
Yeah.
All right, so you're sitting at book 11 now of your popular Sandman Slim series. It's called Ballistic Kiss, and it's the volume of Slim's art. So, for those unfamiliar, can you give us a glimpse as to how we got here? I know it's
Well,
a decade plus worth, but
yeah.
slim it down. No pun intended.
Here's 11 books worth of synopsis for you. Sandman Slim is a man named James Stark. He was a very powerful magician in Los Angeles who was in a magical circle with 7 other people. One of the other people, Mason Fame, was jealous of him and wanted his own power and made a deal to send Stark to hell for power, to get power for himself. So Stark spent 11 years in hell as a living person and was everyone's punching bag for a while. But while he was down there, he realized that there was something strange about him, that in fact, all the times he should have died, he didn't. And the phrases he uses now, once he escaped from hell, is "I'm just hard to kill." And he didn't know why for a long, long time. It turns out that again, this is where we're going, like, how much of a spoiler do we want here? He's hard to kill, and there's a reason for it. Let's just say that. He's still a powerful magician, and over the course of the 11 books, he really, it's interesting to talk about 11 books. 12th book will be the end. It's really 2 arcs of 6 books. That's the way I pitched it. So the first 6 books are really Stark coming to terms with who he is, excuse me, and dealing with the world of gods and devils, what heaven is, what hell is, the nature of both of those things. I never intended God to be a character in the books, and what do you know? God became a major character partway through the series. So the first 6 books are about Stark. I'm just going to say the damn thing. He's a Nephilim. All right, there, I gave that away. Having to deal with both his own identity and the nature of the universe, finding out that Lucifer, the devil, isn't who he thought he was. God is not who he thought he was. The world isn't what he thought it was. The universe, the whole structure of the universe, isn't what he or anybody else thought it was. And then having to cope with that and cope with the old gods who are really pissed off about the new ones. And that's sort of the first arc. The second arc of 6 books is much more grounded in the real world. The 7th book deals a lot with, ironically, it deals with fascism. It deals with fascist groups in LA, many of which that are in the book are based on real groups back in the 30s. LA is a great place for twisted history. There was a group called the Silver Shirts in LA that was created the same week, really the same day that Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. And what's interesting about the Silver Shirts and the version of them I used in the book is that because it's LA and we also have to have crazy stuff with our fascism, they were spiritual crazy fascists. They had secret teachings that were talked to them because the head of this fascist movement was spoken to by secret masters of the universe. So you have fascism plus LA religious craziness. And we start there and we move through Stark's life to the point where Stark is murdered. And that changes everything in his life. Stark is literally murdered. He is disembodied. He is in hell for a year. And the last few books are about Stark coming back from that. Stark being brought back to life by an evil consortium and being given an ultimatum: work for them or be dead forever. And so he throws in with them for a while. He's blackmailed into, if he wants to stay on Earth and get back with the people he loves, he has to work for some very bad people for a while, and the consequences of that. And because of that year he lost in his life, it changed everything. And that's what the last couple of books are about, of him coming back, still having to fight the same supernatural battles he fought before, but now from a position where his lover is gone, some of his friends are different now. Literally, where he used to live is gone. He has to find a place literally to go to sleep at night. He gets lucky with a few of those things, but the last couple of books, those last couple, deal with him rebuilding himself. The whole series is about the rehabilitation of a monster. Stark in the first book is Stark raving crazy. And he is a monster who wants nothing more than to get revenge on the people who sent him to hell. And if he can destroy the world along the way, he'll do that too. What the rest of the series has been about is rehumanizing Stark and putting him in touch with the world. Now, when he went to hell, he lost everything again, and he's having to rehumanize himself one more time. He finds a new lover, he finds new friends, he finds a new place to live. He tries to walk away from his life as someone who fights monsters, but it keeps calling him back. And Ballistic Kiss gets into a lot of new areas. The 11th book that's about to come out, Stark is very reluctantly drawn into a murder mystery and a ghost story at the same time. The murder mystery has to do with a missing angel who was last seen at the Pussycat Porn Theater on Hollywood Boulevard back in the 70s. Stark is asked to find her. Stark says no. I'm not interested in doing that. But through various reasons, he ends up trying to solve the murder of a B actor from the same period. And solving one mystery throws him right back into the second one. And so, as much as he tries to walk away from the world of the supernatural, walk away from the world of gods and angels, he keeps being drawn back into it. Partly because it's how his life works, partly because how existence works for someone like him. He just can't walk away as much as he tries. Book 12 that I'm writing now is the culmination of all that work, where Stark has to confront everything all over again. The 12th book goes back to the first book in terms of story and structure. Things that seemed one way in this over the course of the series, we're going to find out are actually in reality very different. And book 11, Ballistic Kiss, is going to set a lot of that stuff up. And I hope people enjoy it. There's a lot of new stuff in there for Stark. His new lover isn't like anyone he's gone out with before. His life is a bit more serious, but a bit more human. It's his most human book of the series. He has to deal with things he never had to before, and God, he hates dealing with feelings and emotions, but he's dragged into them by having this new lover, by having to save his friends, and by having to deal with ghosts and people whose lives were destroyed and are dead now, but still lost. So that's what Ballistic Kiss is. It's ghosts, it's sorrow, but it's also funny and there's a lot of action. Stark is always has a dark sense of humor that's always going to come through, no matter how serious the story or the circumstances are. He has the sense of humor of an EMT or a cop who's been on the force too long. Very dark, very sardonic, but always funny.
Yeah, very hard boiled.
Hard boiled kind of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've been through enough, you find that stuff. We've all had those bad moments in our life. We've all had those rough patches, and it's what you do with that stuff. And if you can find humor in it, it can help keep you human. Even though for the people outside it, when they see that dark humor, it can scare the hell out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But for you on the inside, anytime you can find humor in the most horrible situations, it's a way to cling to your humanity.
Mm-hmm. So, since you kind of brought it up, I've got a branch off question to my next one.
Sure.
You said that you sold the series as 2 6-book arcs. Was that always the plan, or did you write, the first book not really knowing what direction you wanted to go in?
Well, I sold the first 3 as a package, as a trilogy. I knew I had a larger story I wanted to tell, and I got very lucky because Sandman Slim came out at a time when urban fantasy was really taking off. So, I had a lucky career moment there. I mean, talking straight up about business counts. I got lucky. I had the right book at the right place at the right time. I was able to sell a trilogy, and then I was able to sell a second trilogy. And that completed that large arc I wanted to do. Once we did those, I was able to talk them into letting me do the second half of the 12 books I wanted to do. So I'm happy. I'm both happy and sad to end the series. It's been 12 books and I've lived with these characters for a long time. So on the one hand, I'm very sorry not to be with them longer. But at the same time, I know where this is going, and I know that the characters are going to go through some interesting stuff, and they're going to come out of it stronger and better, except for the ones who die. But in their own way, they'll be stronger and better too.
There you go.
And dying in the books is the nature of death in the books has changed over 12 books too. And I'm not going to tell you what that means, but what death is and how death works has significantly changed in this world that I've created.
Okay. Yeah, you kind of answered my second part. I was going to say, considering book 12 is your final volume in the series, I was going to ask if you felt like the run was over, like it's run its course, or do you think there's, more in the tank for maybe not this, this arc, but maybe a spinoff, or are you going to write some shorter stories within?
Hmm.
I know you've written one short story in the series.
Right.
If you had any more short stories you were going to throw out, kind of to branch some of the other books together.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the possibility of a spin-off series, but really what I want to do when the novels are done is I have a series of short stories I want to write about some of the other characters. I mean, I want to give Stark a break. So there's a story I want to write about Candy. There's a story I want to write about Allegra. There's a story I want to write about Vidocq. So I want to give the sort of the other people their voices,
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. So yeah, I definitely want to do some stories. There's been talk about doing a comic, when the damn film happens. Um, that's a possibility too. That might be a place for the stories, or I might just do them as prose. Well, again, we're it's so frustrating. You're trying to think as someone who's a creator, an artist, and then business sort of keeps kicking you in the head. Like, so yeah, you have to think in terms of like, well, am I going to write a story? Or am I going to write a comic? And which makes the most sense right now? And you also have business people talking at you, like, movie people and things like that. So it will happen, and it's just a question of the form in which it will happen. But I
Yeah.
really have but I really want to write those stories. I have a really interesting Candy story that I want to do because it really gets into who Candy and the Jades are. Because I've never quite gotten deep deep enough into who the Jades are, where they came from, and what's their real nature. Again, that's one of those things I could have thrown in a book, but it would have stopped the story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd rather just give Candy her own separate story and let her, not just basically it's Candy without Stark getting into her world by herself, not needing him.
Okay. Yeah, I like those type little anthologies where you kind of branch out and give everybody
Hmm.
their own. I've seen it done a few times. I mean,
Yeah,
in fan, and I don't know where else I've seen it, but like Mark
right.
Lawrence one for his Broken Empire trilogy, and I know a few other authors that have talked about doing the same because they are like, okay, I'm kind of tired of writing about this character, but with all these other people, I feel like I've got to do something, and if it's
Right.
writing 25 or 30 pages per character and just throwing it all in one book, why not? And so I think that'd be a fantastic little addition to your series, especially for your giant fan base. So, and I was going to save this question, but and I've seen some
Sure.
comment about it, but Chad Stahelski of John Wick fame is, or I guess it has been somewhat talk, directing the movie. I mean, how is that going? I mean, I know it's been a few years kind of in the making, and you kind of mentioned, business people talking at you about the film. Is it
Yeah.
still kind of in production? Is it still in talks, or
Well,
where does
here
it sit?
here here's the great part about Hollywood. I can't talk about it.
Figured.
That's what Hollywood is right now. Hollywood's like the CIA sometimes, and you have secrets, and if you talk about them, you'll get shot in the back of the head. So right now, I've got a gun at my head, and I'm not going to talk about it.
I gotcha. Yeah, or we just won't hear from Richard Kadrey again.
Yeah, exactly. I got to finish the book before I get shot in the head. That's the
There you
deal.
go. Yeah, you got it. You got to get all 12 books done, and then we'll
And
see.
then they can shoot. And then they can shoot me. Then it's
Yeah, there you
done.
go. It'll be an interesting way to go out, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so last question, kind of big, I guess, writing question, but it really more has to do with the physical books themselves. So your book covers are very original compared to a lot of others out there. They are kind of like movie poster like artwork. Was that a decision that was made like unanimously? Did you have a part in that? Was that just your publisher going, we want to go in a different direction? Because I know
Hmm.
the cover started in a certain way and then
Hmm.
just kind of fell into this poster like
Yeah.
work scheme. How did that come about?
Yeah, that they somebody had the great idea to, instead of just doing regular book covers, to sort of, because there's a very 70s aesthetic to the books, which is all completely delivered. It's a very Stark is obsessed with movies, especially during that period. So the idea to make the book covers into sort of B movie posters was, I thought, a great one, and that was from the British publisher. The designers over in England came up with that idea, and I thought it was brilliant the first time I saw it. So the whole series now has those B movie covers, and I have to thank the Brits for that. That was their idea, and we loved it over here, so we ran with it.
Okay. Yeah, I just kind of noticed it. If you sit there and scroll through them, you'll see. Obviously, some of the earlier novels have several different covers depending on what
Mhm.
you're in, and then if they're republished in ebook, they've got a different cover.
Yeah,
But some of the newer ones have kind of stayed the same.
yeah.
As far as this movie push, I thought that was a really neat little deal you had. So
All the early books that didn't have the movie poster covers, all the trade paperbacks now have those movie posters. So if you bought the newer hardbacks and the older trade paperbacks of the first few books, you're going to get all the movie poster versions.
yeah. Yeah, I've seen because you have to kind of scroll through the different different formats to find the one that you want because
Right.
there's probably 3 or 4 different ones depending on where you're at. So that's it. I just thought that was really neat. I thought I'd throw that out there. So
Harper, I have to say, Harper Collins, Harper Voyager, my imprint, has been very, very good about consulting me, keeping me as part of the cover process. What are my ideas? What do I think are the key points of the book or key images in the book that they can work with to create covers? And they've been really very, very kind about that, because a lot of writers get shut out of that process. So they've been very good about treating me well in terms of both cover consultation and voice actors for audiobooks, things like that. So it's been a really great relationship in that way.
if you listen to any of your audiobooks, I know a lot of authors hate listening to their words being read back to them. So
Um, Bits and pieces. McLeod's a great reader, but I really can't get through much more than the 5-minute preview on Audible.com, because it's my own words coming at me, and it's very, in the same way I don't want to go back and read my old work. It's
right.
strange hearing my own stuff spoken aloud too. But I'll tell you what, man, when I'm on tour, I have to read my own stuff. McLeod's a hell of a lot better at reading my stuff than I ever will be.
But so you just like, hey, I'm just gonna play this audio sample from from my
Yeah. I thought of
radio. I'm
that.
not gonna read for you guys.
I thought of that a couple times, just bringing a boombox with me and just playing the audiobook for a while.
You might be
And
the only author that does that.
Oliver Wyman, who did the Coop series for me, another great reader who I think did a terrific job with it. I've been, again, very lucky with all of my audiobooks. Really talented people, and Harper kept me in the loop in all of them.
That's awesome. All right, so last question I have for you, and this is all about book recommendations. Are there any
All
books
right.
you've read recently, or maybe not even recently, but you just feel need more readership?
Yeah, I'm actually calling up some right now because I always forget these things. So give me a second here.
Oh, you're good.
I'm actually, because I always brain freeze when people ask me, "What's a great new book?" Um, well, a novella, we're talking about those. Hammers on Bone by Cassandra Caw is a really good one. A book I'm reading now by Stephen Graham. Um, I'm sitting here even looking at it. Stephen Graham Jones. The Only Good Indians is just phenomenal. So I really recommend that one. And I'm looking at some other ones on my Kindle. Well, okay, I talked about Zelazny earlier. His Lord of Light Jack of Shadows. Some of those books are really brilliant. The Cipher by Kathy Koja is another terrific one. What else have I been looking at? It's funny, I've been looking at a lot of older stuff recently and nonfiction stuff.
Mhm.
So, you know what's I've been reading old Clive Barker a bit. Just
Mhm.
just learning his prose style because I think there's a lot to unpack there. I admire the way he puts things together. So looking at a short piece like Cabal or The Damnation Game has been really interesting. But let's see, I have a couple of novellas over here. Let me take a quick look.
You're good. And Cassandra, I agree with you. Mongrels is freaking amazing. Anything by Stephen Graham Jones needs to be read. Cassandra was just telling everybody about Mongrels by Jones as well. Stephen Graham Jones.
Yeah, Stephen Graham Jones.
I've read
Man,
everything by him. He is
Mongrels
so
is
good.
terrific. Mongrels is like the best werewolf thing I think I've read. Um, Martha Wells, that's a terrific book. A non-science fiction fantasy book I recommend that Mallory Elmira, who wrote The Lady from the Black Lagoon, recommended to me is I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid.
Ian Reid, yeah.
Which is a really interesting book. And I'm reading Paul Tremblay. I haven't read Survivor Song yet. I have that, but the Cabin at the End of the World is a pretty phenomenal book. And actually, there's another Stephen Graham Jones I have that I'm just about to get to that's been highly recommended is The Least of My Scars. Jones is really, I'm really happy that his new book has really taken off because he has, and he's a really good writer for that kind of stuff because he has a ton of backlist. So he has 1 million stories out. He has novellas. He has other books out. So if you like The Only Good Indians, you're in for a treat because he has a lot of work out right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pretty much every book you named, I've read and just absolutely devoured. Only Good Indians was like my second favorite book last year, only behind Blake Crouch's Recursion. I say last year. I mean, it just came out like a month ago.
Right.
I got a super early copy of it, and it was just mind blowingly good. And his Mapping the Interior, which is also a Tor.com novella,
That's a
is
great
amazing.
That's a great
I mean, everything I've read by him though is phenomenal. He's got a new one, a new novella coming out next month called Night of the Mannequins.
Yeah, I have that on order. I haven't read it yet. Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And let's see what else.
There's another one. Marlon James, Black Leopard, Red Wolf, is a really interesting fantasy that I recommend to people.
Okay, I need to read that one. That one's been on my list for a while.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Tremblay. Yeah, I think Survivor Song is probably his best novel yet. I really enjoyed Things, which was his anthology that came out last year. Survivor Song is amazing. I know Stephen King was tweeting about it. I think yesterday.
Yeah, I just saw that. That's not too bad, man.
Yeah, yeah. He and Paul must like be pen pals because I feel like every time he comes out with a new book, King tweets about it. So,
well, it's nice, I mean, sometimes people get a little, kind of pissy about like, well, you writers are always recommending each other's books, and it's like, well, I know a lot of good writers. I'm going to recommend their books, and sometimes they recommend mine, but that's just the way it is. I don't know any bad writers.
I mean, if you did,
I'm really lucky in that all my friends are really good. So if someone sends me something, chances are I'm gonna like it. Another book, I guess it's gotten a lot of play is that came out of nowhere last year. I knew Chuck Wendig was working on a big book at one point, and Wanderers just sort of landed on my doorstep, and I really highly recommend that. It's a big damn book.
Yeah. Yeah, but I say it landed on your doorstep and you couldn't open your door.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, I knew he was working on a big one. I did not know how big. So that's a really good one to look at. And I'm really waiting for Tasman Muir's new book, Harold the Ninth, because I love Gideon.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've got the audio for
I think
that. I
did I
think it
mispronounce
just
her name,
hit.
Townsend? Yeah. Sorry
I
if I
think you're
mispronounced
right.
it.
I think you're right. Yeah, yeah. Gideon was definitely a different book, and I really enjoyed it. And one of my co-blockers read Hero earlier this year and really enjoyed it. So I'm looking
Yeah, I'm
forward.
looking forward to that one.
But yeah, I agree on Wanderers. I read it last year and actually had a chance to meet Chuck at a or book meeting. What am I talking about? I don't even know what these things are called anymore. Book signing in
Right.
Georgia, where he was signing about Wanderers, and I literally was the only person that had read the book there because I got it early. So hearing everybody go, "Can you tell us about the book?" I'm like, "I can tell you everything about the book."
Right. Right.
It's different, but yeah, I was when you said Clive Barker, I thought you were going to say the Books of Blood because he's got a Hulu series based on that coming out, and
Yeah. Yeah.
and then Ian Reed's got the Netflix movie for I'm Thinking of Ending Things coming out
Yeah.
here
That's really
too.
great. I'll be really curious to see. I think Charlie Kaufman, I think, did it, and I think it's an interesting combination. So I'll be really curious to see how that translates. And I
Yeah, I'm
hope
interested to see if he pulls it off because that book is a trip.
it really is. I mean, you think you're reading one book, and then it's like, whoa, what the hell just happened here?
Yeah.
And I find that really fun. I mean, I know that annoys some people. It's like the
Mhm.
movie Something Wild. That's just this, it's an old Jonathan Demme movie that is this goofy kind of 80s romantic comedy. And then all of a sudden it takes this wild left turn and gets darker and darker. And it really upset some people, but I just thought it was a brilliant move. And I think same thing with I'm Thinking of Ending Things.
Yeah, yeah, you can definitely tell by like the reviews that they're very mixed. You either really love it or you just hate it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
I was in the love it camp. I wanted to read it because I wanted to know. I was like, why are the reviews like so mixed? And why
yes,
sitting at 2.5 stars? And I read it and I go, oh, that's why.
yeah.
but
Oh,
it
that's
was
the
like
thing
right up
right
my
there.
alley.
That's the thing right there where it started losing stars for those kind of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I always have to at least give a shot to books like that that have hundreds of thousands of reviews, and I go, there's got to be something to it. So let me see what it's about, and it
Right.
turns you off, or you're all about it. And that was one that I just absolutely loved, and I read it. I think I read it in a sitting because it's a pretty short book.
It's
So
a short book. Yeah, yeah. That's the other thing. It's fun with the novellas, but yeah, it's a bit longer than a novella, but you can read it in a couple of sittings.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Richard, I have had a blast talking with you, and I
Oh,
really
thank you.
you coming on and talking about just the love of books. It's been, especially this last little bit. It's always nice when people recommend books that I've read because I can actually kind of gush over it with you. uh,
Ah, good.
a lot of times it's like, oh, I've just read nonfiction. I don't read a whole lot of nonfiction. So but
Yeah,
it's just been great having you on, and
thank
everybody
you.
checking out. I know that most of you have read Sandman Slim and probably read up to this point, but Ballistic Kiss comes out the 25th of this month.
Yep.
Again, it's book 11 in the series, the penultimate in the series, and book 12 will be out next year. Do you have a working title on it yet?
I do, but I can't say it
Figured.
because again, it might change, and my editor will smack me if I say the one I have now, and it turns out to be something different.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
So it will be a short, punchy title because Stark books always have short, punchy titles.
We'll say Untitled Sandman Slim number 12. How about that?
Exactly, exactly.
It's always worth asking, right?
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Richard. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Hope the
Thank you.
pub day goes well for you. Just about 13 days from now, and
Yep.
maybe we can do this again once book 12 gets here, and maybe even beyond.
Sure, that'd be great. And I had a good
Awesome,
time. Thank you.
absolutely, and enjoyed it, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Thanks, Richard.